Audio's on.
We'll call the meeting to order and we'll do roll call. I see we have two on Zoom.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Gross,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here,
Councilmember Chair Martin.
present. Great. So I know that the minutes were sent out to read. I had read them. Would anybody like to make a motion to accept the meeting? Councilmember Farmer makes a motion. We have a second. Councilmember Bro seconds the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Good. Yes, they passed.
I'd like to abstain if that's okay. I wasn't able to make the last one.
Would you repeat that, Lauren? Okay, got it. Okay. And I don't see any public comment. The one on Zoom.
Second.
So would we like to start out then with the update on the municipal building leak repairs?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. Second, let me get that report up. So we, back in 2024, in November, approved 3 different unique repairs with 2 different contractors. The repairs that were included were the clock tower leak, which was leaking at the seam where the clock tower meets the physical envelope of the building. The second was the back hall of the police station that had some substantial leaking that was, at least at the time, examined to be caused by a deteriorated sealant that connected the roof of that back hallway to the base of the foundation to the side of our building. And then the third leak being atop the second floor kitchen, it's expected to be directly connected with our dormer that is above it that happens to not have proper drainage. So those 3 leaks were identified, and work to improve and try to repair them was approved by the city council back in November of 2024. In December, we had Stat Inc. come out that was in charge of the clock tower and the police station leak. They successfully completed their work on the clock tower, and as of today, we have observed no water infiltration, and it's been fixed. So the clock tower is in good shape. There is an additional measure we could look at doing, which would be adding some type of metal sheet metal, or there's this other fixture we could add where there's a juncture currently that is perfectly flat. It doesn't really make sense why it is that way, but when you see the juncture where it connects the clock tower to the actual building itself, obviously the masonry and the sealant's been repaired and replaced, but there's still a flat zone. So they pretty much reported that if you keep that way and don't put some type of either sheet metal or some type of redirectory slope there to get the water moving when it rains, that water will just sit there, and over time, it'll be a while, but over time you might see that leak come back. So we're looking at that right now, since we are working with leak stoppers for the dormers, that they might be able to put in some type of solution just to get the water from it's a very small area, about 2 inches in depth. That water is just currently sitting. So that's the only thing that's wrong currently with the clock tower, but we have observed no water coming in since we made that repair in December. So that's good. The police station leak is a little bit more tricky. So the work that was contracted has been completed, and additional work actually has taken place. Luckily, Stat didn't charge the city for that additional work, but there was a seam that you could clearly tell that they did a water test. They were able to run water directly through it, and that's what was sealed, was cleaned, repaired, and sealed. And this is directly adjacent to our vegetation roof that we have over on the eastern side of the building. The issue that we've had here is the next time it rained after they completed that work, we noticed the water infiltration wasn't as bad, but it was present. So they came back out, they looked at they kind of followed the seam down. They found another small crack that didn't seem like it was really taking it. It didn't really match up with how much water was coming in, but they said, hey, no problem, we'll come out. They sealed that as well. So they've sealed at 2 junctures now, and they've done a full exploration of that area, checking their work, and they're come to the conclusion that that's been sealed, but there is something going on underneath the actual vegetation itself where there might be a hole in the roof or something that we're not seeing because you have the vegetation there. So there is somewhat some good news here in the sense that the vegetation that's on that roof are sitting in trays, so they can be removed somewhat easily without completely hurting the structure of the building. So the idea would be to have them come back out and remove those and then scope out what might be happening. If there's a crack, then we could easily come back with another agreement. But right now we are working to get both Stat and Garland Company that provides the specialty sealant to come back out, remove those trays, and then do a final expiration. So right now, though, it is leaking, not as bad, but the work that was contracted for it within the scope has been completed. So we're still dealing with a little bit of water infiltration over there. And then last but not least, my memo should it could be updated today. We actually had leak stoppers out on site taking some final measurements. They will be doing the back dormer this Thursday. They're going to be installing it along that back dormer. We're going to be running it directly down and into the area that is troublesome. We can talk about tonight. And then they will be coming back just based off the timeline with ARB that we had to get approved. It's been a little bit tedious. The owner of the company has had a couple issues that are unrelated to the city getting it on time, but they will be here on Thursday to restore that, install that dormer, gutters, and then they're going to be coming back before the beginning of May to finish up the dormer that's above the back entrance of the city hall, and then the dormer that's on the front end of city hall. We currently are not experiencing any leaks at both of those locations, but we're doing this more as a preventative measure. So that we're hoping will prove to fix the problem. If it doesn't, then they're also going to be checking the sealant that's on the base of the window there, and also going to be checking. There's a couple other things that are up there that we're going to see. They're going to be adding on those dormers. It's at about a 12-degree slope. They're going to be adding these caps on the sides so water isn't falling out the side of it. It's keeping it contained and running it directly down that 12-degree slope into this new guttering that's then going to tie in to its own pipe. It's going to go above the little back archery area over there and then go into the retention basin we have in the back. That is the current plan for it. Obviously, the retention basin is another discussion, but that is the current update. We can definitely keep providing updates to the CA report, but also after this Thursday, we should have a good indication if that back leak is repaired. And once we have the actual vegetation removed, that's going to give us a big indication if there's additional work in the police station. Thank you.
Comments, questions? Lauren, see your hand up.
Yes, I just know that we talked about before that the green roof was part of our energy and or green building certification. I think it had a different title other than the LEED certification. So if we remove it, do we have to replace it to keep the certification? And then number 2, if we did replace it, how long could it be off before, I guess, any authority would care? I mean, perceivably, could we take 2 years to replace it without losing a certification and decide if we prefer it not to and it's not worth replacing? I mean, how long do we have?
Yeah, so I believe that if we removed it, it would not remove the certification. So it's not removing it to get rid of it. It would just be removing it to see what's going on underneath it, because underneath those trays is the actual structural piece of that roof. So we're going to be taking it off and then we would identify it.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't replace it with it.
If we don't replace it, I believe that would most likely get rid of our LEED certification. We do still have a couple other green roofs, and we have, I mean, our building checks a lot of the boxes. We could confirm that if it would actually affect our certification. But taking it off won't have any issue as long as the intent is to put it back on.
Okay, but there's no timeline for the intent to be fulfilled I don't mean intent necessarily in quotations, like that wouldn't be our word. I'm just saying that if because we would want to have a lot of storm events to prove that it was actually fixed. I wouldn't want to, just do one rain cycle and see if it was fine.
We can check in on that. My understanding is that if you're repairing it, as long as the thing is the plant and the vegetation right now, it used to have a lot more flowers and it's just a little bit different now. It has a little bit just of a grass almost on the top of it. So in this case, we'll have to check in. I can double check before we remove it or even touch it if it would affect that LEED certification, what the timeline is.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, I guess kind of like with Lauren, like I'm just wondering, I'm not sure what a LEED certification actually does for us other than something that we say that we have. And I'm also like, I've been running some research on this thing, and I think unfortunately we're probably past the statute of limitations to go after anybody on this thing, but I do think it's important for the citizens to like understand what is going on and why. So I just want to make sure, like, as we go through these things, I know we are missing some documentation from when it was built or whatever. We want to make sure we're keeping that as tight as we can. And then I don't know, I mean, my AI friend here suggested getting something called a forensic engineer to come in and tell us what actually might have gone on. I mean, we're not going to get any money back for it, but I do think just based on the price tag of this building and the fact that it is, I think, the most expensive thing that the city has, we should probably do a pretty good job of explaining why it is barely 10 years old and has a lot of pretty significant issues.
Do we have an official answer from city attorney?
Yes, the indication from the city attorney is that it is past the statutes of limitations to be able to go after them legally. But you can always try. I mean, that was the idea, but there's not a very high likelihood of success.
Even the Better Business Bureau contractors who
That-
did that.
Yeah.
I think that would be an important statement. Sure will upset people, but it just seems unfair.
Well, the thing I saw said, I mean, unless there's like an extreme negligence, which might be what is happening,
Yeah.
the 10-year thing works. But I do think it is important, whether it's the Better Business Bureau or not. I mean, I don't want to like assign blame to people that aren't responsible, but there are some pretty glaring deficiencies of what has gone on here. And I think we need to be very specific about it.
I guess the other question is, I know that probably our city attorney doesn't want to get involved, but there are attorneys out there that do specialize in this type of stuff. And they do force the people to produce the records where we may or may not want to do that. Anyway, I just think it's one of these things where shame on us that it took this many years to try to correct it. But when every time we turn around, it's somebody else saying it wasn't their fault or whatever. And I kind of believe that, along with what Lauren was saying, that roof, somebody probably punched a hole in it when they were putting something in there. And it'll probably be pretty obvious where that is in that rubber layer that's in there. And then it could probably be repaired pretty easily. But again, it's one of the other challenges I think that we always have. Councilman Brose.
Yeah, I
Right,
guess,
sort
can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, on the, LEED or green or any of that kind of stuff, I think that definitely takes a back seat to saving our building. So, a lot of what was done, I think looks good on a drawing board. But it doesn't work in real life. So, I own a home. I'm actually in process of building one. There's no way I'd put plants on my roof. So, and I will be very energy efficient and all that kind of stuff. But so I would hope the city will not, try to save some accreditation, at the cost of the taxpayer. That's one thing. Plus, I guess, Tom, the things you've mentioned are all important, I guess. But we need to attack the big issue. And those are all symptoms of the problem. And where are we at with trying to assess, the problem? And is it plastic soil? Is it the faulty drainage? Because we were all sitting in utopia trying to figure out. I mean, we've got a bigger issue there. And I think it's good that we finally are addressing some of the symptoms, but the entire drainage on both sides of the building, with this, whatever you call those, wet gardens or moisture traps, whatever you want to call them, that needs to be addressed. So where are we at with trying to fix what might be the cause of these issues, not just trying to correct, what has been breaking because of the issue? And I don't, maybe that's later in the meeting, but that's what I thought maybe we would jump into tonight. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Thomas.
Thank you, Councilmember Brost. I appreciate that comment. That actually is right into the meat and potatoes of what we were going to get into. And with your permission, if we can, could we open up that discussion?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to mention was after we do that, let's go back and make a motion to finish up these little things that we think would be one more step in ensuring that we get stuff taken care of, so that we don't wait. If they say that we need something done to keep that 2-foot area from holding water, it's silly for us to fall into the same trap that some of this other stuff has been. So yeah, we can go ahead and then on to the leak repair. I'm sorry, the UES report.
Yes. So UES, just to give everyone an update, that's Geotechnology, the company that we consulted with last year to do a geoforensic study of the building, specifically doing 4 different things, going in and installing a piezometer, which studies the pressure of groundwater. That was installed on the western portion of the building. It's where we had some space to do so. There is no water retention basin at that location, so just as a heads up there, but it's right next to the most farther western portion of the building. On top of that, that was just checking the pressure on that side to see how water is flowing. The other component was digging 4 test pits in the back garden. There was somewhat of a assumption, and we'll talk about it a little bit further here later in the meeting, but there's an assumption, since we've had the massive flooding in the back storage locker area that we have here in our city hall, and then we also had the leaking that occurred within the women's bathroom here on the first floor, that it seems like there was some type of water pressure that was pushing up against that back wall of the foundation. So we found it very pressing to see what was going on in that rain garden and really go down to the base of it. And what was found was, at least in one of the test pits where they got deep enough, they were not able to confirm if there was drainage at the footing of the actual foundation itself. On top of that, there was kind of a lack. They showed that it was intact to a sense, but there could definitely have been additional measures to put a rock mix between the actual rain garden itself and the dirt that makes up the actual retention basin. So there are a couple things that were missing from that back basin. The other component they were looking at, just to get through their 4 items they were looking to address, the crack monitoring. There were crack monitors installed all across the building, especially where you see cracks. And they pretty much checked those in June, July, and then February of this year. The main one to look at here, and there was an addendum to the report for that check, for the February check, was that in June and July, when they were doing the other work, they really weren't seeing too much movement within the building, and the temperatures were pretty consistent. So we wanted to wait until it got as cold as it could possibly get to then get another read on it. And that point, you now have the 2 extremes of Missouri weather. So they did come back in February, and there were pretty significant findings that came up after that February meeting, which we will discuss here in a moment. And then last but not least, what they did, they took out a core sample of the slabs that is built into the foundation of our building here, one in the community room, where if you stand back as you're approaching the community room, you could see a slight heave. It's very hard to notice if you're not looking for it, but there is a slight heave upwards, like there is some type of pressure pushing up. They also took since it was closer to the back and also for aesthetic reasons to not, destroy the portions of the building that we don't want to touch. They went into the janitor's closet where they were able to find a place that didn't have utilities and took a core sample there as well. So two different samples to compare. And the good thing about that was one is closer to that back wall and the other is a little bit closer to the center of the building. So that I found is an important item to refer to. So that's what they did. They have completed their work. They have submitted their final report. And what they found was pretty alarming in the sense that the rain garden in the back was not improperly, but that footing drain should have definitely been installed. That is causing water to seep underneath the building. On top of that, that is causing water just to sit without that adequate rock mix / permeable surface that would go in between the rain garden itself and the building. That has caused over time that water just builds up and slowly pushes up against our foundation. So eventually, if you keep pushing water on something, it's going to find a way in. And that's what seems to have happened here in the back hallway, in the back storage closet area, and then also in the women's restroom that we've had issues. So both of those things are obviously a lead indicator of what's going on. When they took the core samplings, there was another interesting finding that, well, it's just to speak in plain talk here, in the back janitor's closet, that's the closest area towards the rain garden in question. They found a decent amount of fatty soils, first and foremost, so the plastics that we were worried about having. They also found that it had a lot more water saturation than the sample that they took here in the center where the community room. So it seems like that sample happened to have more water in it, but both had presence of fatty soil. And originally, when this building was supposed to be put together, there were supposed to be 3 feet dug. The geotechnical report back then was to go down 3 feet and remove all dirt and replace it with a new mix that's not even dirt. They were supposed to use some type of rock, consolidation of rock. So that showed some pretty negative signs towards what's going on here as well, showing that it gets a little bit more wet underneath the ground as you get closer to that back rain garden. The other component that is of interest is that the piezometer, that is kind of, if you look at the building from east to west, you will see that it goes up on an upward slope from east to west. At the western portion, you're at pretty much its highest point when it comes to the topography around it. So it was an interesting finding just to see what the water pressure was going to be like from that piezometer. And the piezometer didn't actually show much water pressure at all. So it seems that that area of the building is doing just fine. Where we were testing and found some serious issues was coming from that rain garden. So what seems to be the issue right now is that the rain gardens, and we did not test the front, so we cannot confirm or deny if there's the drainage on the front rain gardens. They're obviously not as big, but they do still matter. And not only that, but you also have the permeable surface we have right out here in the council chambers outside. But this is by far the most large area that we have that's collecting water, and it is sitting right up against our foundation. What the idea here is, when it rains, that water is pooling, it is slowly seeping, and there's no mechanism in the rain garden currently that's keeping it from driving underneath our ground, underneath the foundation that we have. Once it gets there, there are the presence of these fatty clays that are expanding, especially when you have variations between cold and hot, where in Missouri you have that quite often, that is causing an upward heave on the building itself. And just the way the building is put together, you have a decent amount of foundational support up against that back wall where the rain garden is. So the only place the pressure can really push it is push the wall outwards towards the front end, towards the garage is the best way to say it. And what that does, and when you notice on the second floor of this building, you won't really see the junctures of the building falling apart and the areas that are closest to the rain garden. You're going to see those junctures closer towards the other side, towards the garage, showing that force is pushing outward. So the idea here is the foundation is somewhat getting pushed, and really the fatty soils confirmed it. And there's 2 things that the geotechnical forensic study showed us and the engineers had recommended is twofold. One, you need to keep water from getting from underneath the building. So reworking this rain garden is almost a must. But another more important and very concerning finding and recommendation was that you almost need to go in with a surgical knife and carve out our current foundation and replace it, which as we're functioning, we have an active police precinct, we have, staff here every day, would be very difficult to do. So tonight, the department is more so directing, asking for more of a recommendation to get an engineering firm to redesign this garden, this rain garden, to push it away. So there's a couple things the department believes could be done to benefit and keep the water out. And one of those things is, first and foremost, you have to excavate the entire thing to see what we're really working with. If we're going to spend the money to go in and redesign and reconfigure this thing, taking all the dirt out, at least near the footing of the foundation, to figure out exactly what is going on. Then going in and installing the drainage pipe that should have been there all along. Then also adding in that rock and aggregate mix in between what you're going to configure later and just the foundation itself. Then moving into the most important component, making the rain garden somehow slope more heavily. Instead of having it now, it's like almost an even keel, with a basket collecting water evenly, having it slope towards the parking lot, because if water is going to somehow seep underneath the parking lot and cause a little bit of damage to the parking lot over 10 years, you can always get them patched, you can get it resurfaced, but having it go underneath the building is actually causing a lot of the heaving that we're seeing in the wall separation. The other component would be to reconfigure it and potentially utilize the center island retention area that we have, connecting the two somehow to allow some additional water storage. Because one thing is, when we change this, this is definitely going to be something that MSD is going to have to get involved with. But right now, it seems like that is the one lodge. If we want to get to the root of the problem, we're going to need to reconfigure this water garden, rain garden, and potentially look at the one in the front as well that has that's up against the police station on the front end. So both will need to be looked at. We could also explore what it looks like, but cost-wise, it is pretty unfeasible to go in and replace and remove the entire foundation. It would just be a very tedious task to do that. We could, it would just take a long time and a lot of man hours. And that was reported by UES as well. So the idea would be to keep water out and drive it away as much as you can, even if that makes it so we have to reconfigure our parking lot, whatever we have to do, but just to move this outwards. So the idea to get an engineering firm to start designing what this new rain garden is going to look like, because there are requirements that we have to store so much water on our lot. Luckily, we are a LEED certified building, so there is probably some areas that we might be a little bit over that what is actually required. So we're going to be checking with MSD. So the idea tonight, to get a recommendation to reach out to MSD to start this discussion about how we want to reconfigure this, and then also have an engineering firm engaged to begin redesigning this this rain garden. And one last piece, to go back to the crack monitors, as mentioned, they did not notice too much deviation in what we found in June and July and August of last year. Especially on the first floor, it was, the same as every other building. It didn't really have too much movement. When they came back in February, they found, I believe it was 5 millimeters that it had shifted. So the crack had gotten wider by 5 millimeters. So when they also indicated, this was verbally, not in the report, but once it gets warmer, you'll probably see it close a little bit back up, but you're going to see that movement. But the backwards. So it's moving about anywhere between 5 millimeters, all taking place on the second floor. So that then again goes back to supporting this idea where the current wall and foundation is kind of supporting this back wall that's facing the south, but then the northern wall is getting all of that pressure and being pushed outwards, because that's where where the force can go. So there's two ways we could approach it. We could either reconfigure how the water is being stored near the building and push it away, or we could go about removing those fatty clays, which have been confirmed in the foundation that we have just here throughout the entire first floor. But I am not an engineer. I guess I'll ask our engineer if he's got any additional items to add. I know you've been in the meetings as well, but the department will be requesting engaging an engineering firm and also starting to get that discussion started with MSD, because there's going to be a lot of requirements for what we're going to have to do.
Rick, any comments?
No, I think Thomas did a pretty good job for a non-engineer of summarizing all the reports so far. The indication of the fat clays under the slab of the building, I think basically what UAS said was there's not a feasible way to eliminate those soils. So the best way is to try to address the water and keep it out from underneath the bottom of the building, the slab. Thus, we would look to try to redesign the rain garden and or improve the drainage of the foundation, potentially by replacing the pipe that's missing or otherwise.
Interesting. Mr. Bros.
Yeah, I think, Tom, that was a good update. I mean, it's very similar to the discussion we've had in the past. This is one of those times where it's probably going to be one of the most difficult decisions in our city, but I mean, what you're talking about is, should we just turn City Hall into a parking lot? Find a home for the police department. We got some empty space. The city stops being a landlord and starts being a tenant. And because I don't know if maybe the people that were involved in the design of this building are online, but the biggest mistake we made is we hired a bunch of idiots to do it. And everything you just talked about, let's just say it's $5 million. Is it really worth $5 million to maybe correct the problem? So I know I'm going off council soon, but I would, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on engineering. Whatever the estimate comes back at, multiply it times 3, and then really decide whether or not we just have to make the big decision. Is that this is such a cluster. It's hard to redo a foundation under a building. And is it worth spending $5 million to do it? So I think we find a home for our police department, and we find a home for City Hall, and let's tighten the belts and lower our overhead. But I mean, there's been 2 major decisions the city's made. That one was City Hall and one was Community Park. And I think what we're seeing is the City Hall is a disaster. I just don't think we should throw a lot of money at it. I know that sounds terrible, but you start throwing money at it, you're never going to stop. But those are my, I don't want to say departing words, but everything you talk about is very common in the St. Louis area. And when something is common, why was it done so poorly? And again, we can't go back and sue somebody for being a stupid idiot. But my house, when I built my home in Wildwood, I had plastic soil. I had to dig down an extra 2 feet. I had to get rid of it. I had to put in rock. I mean, it's not uncommon in our region. And something that's not uncommon, it's not like it's the only place in town. So I just not sure City Hall is going to survive. And again, you mentioned MSD. It's the same thing we talked about whenever we started this committee. Yeah, they got to get involved, but the issues you're talking about, I mean, maybe we could just hang on for 10, 15 years and then tear the building down. But it's just not gonna, I don't think it's sustainable. And You just had a collection of idiots design it, and there was no real management with getting it done right. I mean, I think those idiots, and I hope they hear this, those idiots were probably also the project managers. So when you take idiots along with idiots, you're going to get idiots as a result, and that's what we have. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably unlike Larry and Lauren, I'm going to be around at least for a little bit longer, but I agree wholeheartedly with Larry. I mean, this is a boondoggle to the extent that it's difficult to fathom how it doesn't border on criminal negligence at some point. So, I mean, we've got a bunch of nice vacant buildings right around town center. I'm sure we could move you guys to a place that's nice and figure out a plan to do this. But I mean, I agree. We need to do a better job. I think from a city, we've talked about it a lot in a lot of different places of really working to plan forward on a lot of stuff. That we're just slapping what sounds like an incredibly expensive Band-Aid on a broken leg. And I don't think that's going to fix this. I mean, we could take the rain gardens out. We could plow everything. I don't think it's going to fix the problem. I also am concerned in a year and a half or whatever, we're going to inherit a garage that's also sitting on this stuff that I'm sure is slowly sinking into the ground, which is creating the several $100,000 worth of repair we're going to inherit there. I don't know if we found it next door in the Village Green. I imagine we did. Does it extend then beyond that to where we're about to put 53 more houses and a big building to the other side of here? I mean, I would hope that the private entities, not necessarily our business, but I would hope they would do a better job than the public entity did at fixing or assessing this problem. But I mean, I'm with Larry. I don't know who was responsible for this, but an idiot or several is the best descriptor of them. I mean, this is really bad.
I have some comments, but I'm going to save those.
So I'll jump back in, Joe.
Sure.
It's
Larry.
okay. No,
Yeah.
I would just say is that let's be careful on how much money we spend on engineering. And Tom, there's an engineer I recommended to you. I don't know if you ever reached out to him, but I still highly recommend him. I've worked with him for 20 years. I just, if I want an honest answer, he's the guy I would go to. And leak fixers or whatever that, I mean, that's great. I'll agree it's money good spent, but you really need to get it down to earth. And if we're looking at $2, $3, $4, $5 million, we need to cut bait and just move on. And I strongly recommend. I mean, I have experience in, not this, but everything you talk about, I can relate to. But and again, we might be able to milk this building for 10 years, so it's not an immediate thing, but I think we need to come up with let's do the engineering. Let's not spend $500,000 for them to come back and tell us it's going to cost $2 million, and then we spend $10 million. Try to spend 100 or 200, come up with something, and I just don't see it. I don't see a good outcome here. I don't, and it's the toughest decision you might make as a city administrator. May end up being your best one.
Thank you, Mr. Brust.
Lauren, any comment, question?
I've wondered if the building for a while would probably be a tear down just in the future. However, even if I would want a different type of building or want improvements, I still like the city's position of owning a functional building in the future rather than leasing long-term. So I think it's something, I mean, we may have to, honestly, we may have to go into a lease in the future. I don't want any sort of mold issue. But I think the long-term goal would be to own a building. Just because I mean, there is the other 30 acres that the city owns. It was commercial space where there could be build out, but I don't know.
Thank you. I guess the question would be, since we have the rain garden in there, and it's obvious that not only was the rain garden not done the way they were supposed to do it, but then also that section under the building is not done the way it should be, but it appears that it's the back part of the building to do that. Unfortunately, I had experience of managing some bottling plants where the ground washed out underneath the building, sewer lines washed out. And there are companies out there that can come in there. We never lost a day of production. They came in and were able to bore underneath, put new drain lines under. And actually, the one company is down in the valley that runs a plastic line through bad lines. And I know they do it all over the world, but I mean, they were in like in a day and a half and had redone all of the backwashing equipment out. Now this was in Norfolk, Virginia, so a lot of that had been ocean damage to start with. But there's technology out there. I don't know how. I know that was a long time ago when I did that, but I bet it's only better than what it was back then. Because at that particular point, those were 12, 16-inch concrete floors they had to drill through to be able to even see that there wasn't anything under the buildings anymore. So I think that there's probably ways to do it. I guess the question is, if it is the rain guard, and we know that that's what's pushing the damage that way, even if whatever we had to do is, I can't think that it would be that expensive to take it. It's not like it's under another building or hidden inside of a building or something. I would think that being able to pull it all out of there and get it back down to where you had a drain pipe out of there and could do that. And then, as you said, slope it or something like that would probably be a less expensive way of doing some of the other things. The other question would be is if they know that that fatty soil is located in a certain area, they do make equipment that can go in and pull out soil and put concrete in. I mean, it's kind of like the mud jacking stuff that we've done in city streets all over the place where it starts popping up a block and a half down the street. But I think there would be some other options there to do it. So I don't know. I think we ought to plan ahead far enough to say, okay, what are the things that we can do not to damage the building more? Because if we continue to not do anything, then I think the building will become less and less valuable, let alone that we need it. But I would think it would be interesting to see some other options of people who know how to deal with this kind of stuff. And obviously our initial highly rated architectural committee in the beginning was not the right people. And as a one-time mayor, I can tell you, I know that one personally, because we were going to use outside contractors to build the building. We were not going to use Wildwood architects because they weren't qualified. But that, I mean, I just think that's part of what we have to try to do is to look at that. But I would think since it is open and exposed and we know there are problems there, I think that might be more favorite cost than just say, well, let's figure out what to do. And maybe it would take, but even if you had to pull out part of the driveway here and move stuff out, that'd be a lot cheaper than having the building collapse, building not be able to move back. The one question I had is if you can get the water to not be back in the middle of the building because it never got there like it was supposed to. The blueprints I looked upstairs, that pipe was to be 12 to 18 inches below the foundation. So if that were it, then that would not have allowed the water to get back underneath there. So fatty soil or not fatty soil, if that drain were there, that may be half the thing. And I would think it'd be a lot easier to dig a deeper hole than it would be to figure out how to do something else. So I just look for some recommendations that we could come to some agreement on.
Yeah, in that case, I mean, that's something we could, that's not going to be as expensive if we were to go in and we could check with MSD what type of approvals is being put back in the same way, that's obviously not going to be too big of a deviation. You're still storing the same amount of water there. If we just maybe carved up against that wall, and went down, further than what we did and did it across the entirety of it, maybe we could just install that piping at the footer versus having to go in and reconfigure the whole thing. I think that, how much do you think? Just a rough idea. I won't hold you to it, but I don't think.
Honestly, the blueprints are really simple. I tagged it in the book upstairs, but the blueprints are real simple. To look the drawings, you could just see where it was supposed to be.
Something that doesn't need to be engineered either. It's just, you're just replacing it. And the thing is, it's on the spec sheet anyway. So in this case, the department could go ahead and begin preparing that very limited scale project. And if it doesn't work, then we kind of know that's kind of it for that rain garden, I suppose. But, if we were to get an engineer involved, it wouldn't be, they might come back and Mr. Brose and Mr. Farmer bring up very valid concerns in the sense that if say this footer doesn't work and it's still coming in, we're talking millions if we had to reconfigure the entirety, take out the entire drive and figure all of those things together. It would begin to add up pretty quickly. So in this case, would the committee be looking to potentially go forward with that scaled back project just to get that drainage pipe in there? We could definitely get that out.
I'm just looking for options. I don't know.
Yeah, well, maybe before we do that, I don't know, Joe, if you'll know the answer to this. If let's pretend that this wasn't City Hall, this is one of these other buildings around here that we figure out this is happening in. At what point does the city need to step in because it's a safety issue or whatever you want to call it? Is there a magic event that occurs for us to do that?
Mr. Farmer, most of our code enforcement is complaint driven. So if someone were in that public building and felt at risk or saw something that was out of the ordinary, then we would probably get involved. I say probably in the context of problem properties with St. Louis County oftentimes takes on our tougher cases because they bring a building inspector with them. But for the most part, if it's a public building and it presents a risk, there are avenues to address it.
Because I guess I'm trying to think through this thing. So my guess is that our friends at MSD assumed that this thing was piped and built correctly,
It's certified, of course.
which it wasn't. So by us asking them to think up through this, I have to imagine that we're opening a whole new can of worms that is going to get perhaps quite a bit more expensive.
Yes, if you start getting if we were to do a project where we're just replacing the piping, that wouldn't really, I don't think, trigger it. We'd have to get the permitting, which could get a little testy. But if we were to re-engineer the entirety and configure it, yeah, I could see that getting a little bit more complicated with MSD.
I'm just thinking, much like the thing on the roof, the rain garden looked good on a piece of paper. It doesn't function at all. So us trying to expend any money to save that seems silly to me. If we can do this, if there's Larry, I don't know if you'll have a suggestion on this. If there's an amount of money that we want to try to authorize in some fashion to go out and have someone who is an expert in this tell us the best way. If we can put a pipe in, I'm all for it. My parents had the same thing at their house. They had whatever that stuff is all wrapped around the foundation and pushes the water out or whatever. But I just think, we need to get a real clear idea of how much this is actually going to cost so that we as a council and, we can start communicating to the city, these are the decisions that need to get made because, I'm all for spending $100,000 or whatever it takes to get an engineer to come in here and tell us that this is definitively going to cost us $1 million to fix. I'm not excited about $1 million, but I'm certainly more excited than them coming in and telling us it's going to be $10 million to fix. But I think, we can try to come up with all the creative solutions in the world. We need to get something. We have these gargantuan rains and everything else. So the longer we don't do something, the worse this problem and more expensive it gets.
Is there a useful life for a rain garden? I know all the problems we had at Brightleaf where they had to come in and rebuild those detention areas. Is there a useful life for a rain garden?
I'll defer to Mr. Vunish, but I think they're supposed to last if well maintained with vegetation.
And again, Mr. Brown may want to comment as well, but I think the fallacy of our rain gardens has been the fact that they weren't properly maintained from the onset. For the most part, they were very, they functioned well and looked great for the first couple of years. And then as time went on, maintenance was deferred. So at least from the perspective of the department, it's a cost component. And I think from the standpoint, if they're well maintained, like Mr. Lee said, I'm sure Mr. Brown would concur. Generally, they should last as long as you need them to last.
So as an option, I know that the LEED certification, all that, but what happened if you took the dirt out of there and put holding tanks in there? Retention tanks.
Well, that was, we obviously have underground detention down in our village green, and that was something that's what, when we talk about having an engineer potentially reconfigure it, that could be included. Quite honestly, the department would recommend just throwing some sump pumps. MSD wouldn't be too happy about that, but having some automatic pumps turn on.
Happy's one thing, but when it comes to taxpayers' money
Yeah.
and trying to maintain an expensive building, but those would be some of the options. I mean, I think the LEED thing was great when everybody's trying, but there's a lot of maintenance there. And if you don't do it, then it just becomes a lot more cost. But I know that I've seen some of these areas where the size of the tanks you have to put in, imagine, would not be that big if you had the big hole there to start with, that you could do that, or even get it to a certain point and then run it over into the middle of the parking lot, to kind of do a lateral thing. Just, I am the furthest you're ever going to have from an expert on it. I just think that there's got to be some way to figure out how to get some more life out of about a $9 million building. So, other comments? Farmer.
No, I guess we need a motion, right?
Yeah, would the motion be to confirm, would the motion be to start looking into the cost just to maybe get that drainage pipe installed, and then also have an engagement with an engineering firm not to exceed a certain number?
Well, I mean, I almost wonder, I like the idea of the drain pipe, but
Do we want to tie that in?
well, I think that's probably designed in such a way that it's expecting other things to have happened, which didn't. So I don't want to, I mean, if that works, great, but I would like a certified professional to tell us that that is actually going to work. And then I think we need to, I think we need to put a fixed number on this. I also think, because this is such an expensive tax, this is the most, this is the most expensive thing we've done, right? The building. So, I think that it is really imperative for the city to be exceptionally transparent with our residents about what is going on and why. And so, I think if that means that we need to spend, $10,000 on somebody that comes out here and digs up whatever and gets the paperwork and kind of explains to us what happened, I think that's important, because I think that we're going to do our residents a disservice. And I am certain, based on who I think the folks that were involved in this thing were, that the story is going to get convoluted very quickly. And we need to be clear with our residents, because, we need to maximize the money as much as we can. And this is definitely not doing that. So, I'd be happy to make, I don't know how that motion works. I can try to think about it here for a second, but I think we need to I think we can maybe do that all as a one.
So really, to get a cost estimate for the engineering or for the actual repairs itself, so that getting an engineer's estimate or getting a quote from an engineer for how much work it would take them to really get to the bottom of the issue. Well, the issue is obviously.
So yeah, so I think it's two separate things. I think it's two different people. So I think there's, Rick, you tell me, is there such a thing as a forensic engineer? Is that a real thing? I don't know what that does. The guys.
That's more or less what UES is doing for us, quite frankly. But I think we're looking to get more specific into a design to address the groundwater issues, frankly, with the foundation. So again, it would be two two parts of it. One would be looking at the rain garden and the second part would be looking at the drain around the foundation.
And so that may be, since these guys have kind of already done a lot of that work, that might be engaging in a different attorney than John or something that can try to get a clear picture of who and what. I mean, I assume certain people, I would imagine you have to retain your records for some certain period of time. So maybe we can still do that.
It's true. Our records are showing something different than I think what's out there.
Right. And that's what we need to make very clear. And I think, it's not, I hate to use the word, like I don't want to go on a witch hunt and start, lighting torches and pitchforking people, but like, I think it is important that we, those of us that are now in these seats were not here when this was built. So, I mean, I think outside of Ed, yeah, but you were here not that whole time, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
Ed knows, and I guess Mr. Vunich knows a little bit because he was here, but outside of that, there's a very small group of people that have any working knowledge of what we're dealing with. So you're going to ask a bunch of people to make some pretty big choices without having any clear understanding of what's going on. And then regardless, if we're going to spend $5 million to fix the building, which I hope we're not, or we're going to turn the building into a beautiful park/parking lot, we're going to have to explain that to people, and they're going to want to know why it costs $8 million of a building to do that. Larry's got a question. Let me think about this motion thing here for a second.
Mr. Rose.
Yeah, it's not necessarily on point, but like when you're operating a business, you need to think about what is your business. And for 20 years, I had a construction company. We constructed, but we were not owners of real estate. I mean, we had expertise in real estate, but our business was constructing. It was not owning real estate. And there was, I think it was Sheraton Hotels, but they were having operational problems. I think this was like 40 years ago. And the whole book, the purpose and what they talked about is that they concluded that they were in the hospitality business. They were not in the real estate business. So they structured their business around being the hospitality side. And when we talk about should the city own a building, lease a building, what is the city's business? And is the city's business owning real estate? And that's just a question. I don't, different answers. But I would venture to say that the city's business does not have to include owning real estate. There's experts in real estate, in operating it, maintaining it, taking care of it. So I would just think about what is the city's business. And if you think about it, I mean, it seems disproportionate to have $9 million in an office building, but what is our sole purpose in operating our city? So when it comes to some engineering, I mean, Tom, when we first started, we talked about problems with MSD. Doesn't sound like there's been any progress, whether it's been a year or so, zero progress. So whatever progress there's going to be there, so be it. You're going to find out there's problems. Well, then the consequence is we tear the building down. But whether we spend $100,000 or $500,000 in engineering, so be it. But don't go to the 5 million, because that's where it's going. I mean, that's where it's going. I'm sorry to say that, but that's where it's going. So just be careful. So I'm sorry. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Sounds good. Lauren, any comments?
I understand where Larry's coming from, which is to be economically resilient and nimble, and to not have to maintain structural issues that you don't want to. I think that the question that we need to explore is always what's the best, deal for taxpayers, because we are property owners, whether or not that's parks, we don't have a private company that leases the buildings and hold the bathrooms. We've purchased other real estate to keep it from flooding. So we are in the business of that. It's just, are we in for a penny or in for a pound? And that's an answer that exploration of, what it costs to maintain this particular building would give us a better answer on.
We were renters for 20 years, so.
Yeah, I mean, I,
But
I have been thinking a lot and trying to do some research because I mean, just the fact that we have this building seems odd to me. It is outside of what we do with literally everything else. The parks make sense, the trails and all of that I get, but like I don't know why this building,
we were spending a lot of money
were we spending $8 million for it?
for 20 years each year. I mean, it was 1.4 million when we delayed building the first city hall until this one built. Rent
Where was that?
2 years up here across from above the bank. We were upstairs and in that building. Side of Main Street.
Yeah, cool. Wow. Well, that's the folks we've talked about before. All right. Well, okay. So I'm happy to try to make the motion. I'm wondering though if it needs to be separate ones to make the most sense.
Probably. I think.
Okay. So I think the first one is to engage, I'll just say someone, because I'm not sure who that person would be, to engage someone to get the, best, fastest, and cheapest immediate repair to the building, whether it's putting in this pipe or digging up the rain gardens and lighting them on fire. I don't know what it is, but somebody's got to be able to tell us how to do that. And I think that probably in terms of what we're doing, that needs to be done as soon as possible, regardless of what our other engineering situation is going to be. But I want to make sure that whoever we're engaging, that it is like, we're not just sticking a pipe in a hole. Like there's real science or math or whatever we want to call it to assuming that is going to make this better. That would be motion number one.
And is that referencing specifically to the repair that for the back rain garden instead of the entire, because there's obviously a lot more issues working
Yeah,
on
we're not
this.
doing, I mean, the entire thing.
So this is more so the rain garden with that drainage pipe with a professional coming in and saying that will help the problem
Yeah, I mean,
and getting a quote.
based on my reading, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that is the worst and most aggressive problem area. The other ones are bad, but that one is much worse.
Yes, then that not being there is a problem.
That's causing problems.
So that I want to have fixed to the best of our ability in the, short term, I guess you would call it.
So would you like the staff then to get estimates from a couple companies that are qualified to do that?
Yeah. I mean, the estimates and I think it's great. We're telling them why we think that would work. My preference would be they tell us what they think will work.
I guess I'd look at it as the building was designed with a foundation drain, which is standard practice and is good practice. I don't believe it's any other reason to believe that. So the thought would be to repair the foundation drain. And I can't imagine that there'd be any negatives with doing that. And given the data that we have, seems like that would alleviate a lot of the problem.
Okay. So that's motion one.
Any comments on the motion or a second? I'll second it.
Nice work. Larry's going to second.
So Larry seconded it. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then I don't know if, I don't think this necessarily needs to be in the motion, but this can't take like a year and a half to do. Like, we got to get this happening.
Rain.
Yeah. Okay. Then the second one is going to be, and Larry, I guess I would appreciate your advice on an amount of money not to exceed, but I do think we need to engage an engineering firm that's going to give us a number to fix this problem as a whole. And I don't know how, I mean, I personally don't think we should be spending more than $100,000 on something like that, unless that's crazy. I don't know. I don't pay these kinds of engineers to do stuff.
Well, I've got a question maybe for our Mr. Brown, who always has the right answer, but should it be sort of a two-part? Should there be sort of a phase 1 and a phase 2 where we, sort of like when I was in banking and we were buying buildings, we'd always had the EPA out there, and we'd have a phase 1 study and then we have a phase 2 study. But should we have sort of a beginning where maybe there's a crossroads where maybe we approve 100,000 or something to have an initial review, and then based on that, then this is a major thing. If we spend $500,000 on engineering and we have a good outcome, that was money well spent. But I just think we need to phase it, because we all sort of know what's coming. So I mean, Rick, is something like that possible?
Councilmember, I think absolutely. If you'd like us to stage it so that the first phase of work is more of a conceptual report, study, plan with costs, I think you could do that. That's common practice as well with most engineering activities that we engage. So we could certainly present it to you in that fashion. Then you'd know the cost of that phase of the work. And if you wanted to move forward into actually putting some plans together to get bids for the work, that would be the next phase of it. And that would cost a little bit more to do that as well.
I mean, I just think we can, sort of tiptoe for a while before we jump all in.
Yeah. So Rick, is $100,000 the right number, or is that too much or too little? I don't know.
I would feel that 100 would be ample for the overall project, quite frankly.
Okay.
I think we're under that, but 100,000 for the whole the full project
So
would
if
be more
we
than
give
enough.
you guys, a not to exceed, that doesn't mean you're going to go drop $100,000 on this thing, right? Okay. That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you guys, Larry, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the 100 is to me is relative to the 9 million we're talking about. So it's minor. It's still $100,000, but I mean, our, utopia is that we save this building and it only costs a couple million and everybody's happy. So I'm yeah, 100's good. I mean, not to exceed, and then we come back and evaluate, call it phase 2 based on the results from phase 1. I mean, we tore bank buildings down because of a phase 1. I mean, we took a bulldozer to it. So I mean, it's good information to have. So I think that's a very prudent decision.
Well, none of our options really gave us any suggestions other than fixing the rain garden first, right? I mean, that's kind of where we have to start.
Yeah. So yes, the rain garden was obviously first step, but they also did have information in the report about going through pretty much step by step and getting rid of those fatty clays that are underneath the building as well. So there was 2 components doing both, and that doing both I think Mr. Brost is correct. And without being an engineer, not doing the full study, I think we're starting to get to crazy amounts of dollars if you start taking out
Yeah,
the foundation.
I would agree with that. So go ahead, sir.
Okay, so then this motion is going to be a phased approach to the, I guess, engineering or efficacy of the repair to the building, not to exceed $100,000. And then Rick, how long would you anticipate like the first set of information taking?
Well, I don't believe that, I think we're talking more about months. If you wanted to engage a professional, once they've been hired and are on board, I wouldn't anticipate the work to take more than a month or two, quite frankly. Produce a report maybe for the consideration of the council or your committee.
Because I mean, my other assumption, I could be wrong, we've done this on the watershed thing, is like, we've already done this report is pretty extensive. So I mean, my assumption is they'll be able to take at least some of that information and utilize that in whatever
Absolutely.
they're coming up with.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're not like,
Going different direction.
yeah, or taking, 2 more years to get this done. So I would like that as quickly as humanly possible. How about we put it that way in the emotion?
That always reads real well. Okay, so we have that motion. Do we have a second? All right. Councilman Bro seconds it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion pass.
Okay. And then my last well, I guess we got to go back, right, to do the roof thing after this. But the last and final thing I would like to do in terms of this is I think it's probably a lawyer that we would engage to start figuring out, with all this data we're collecting and things that we're missing and whatever, we need a very clear, unbiased third-party person to put the story together as to why we are sitting on this building in the state that it is in, so that can be very easily disseminated to our residents.
And I know that that's,
Well, Ed, I know you're in that sort of line of business. If you know somebody, I do know somebody, again, they're a resident of Wildwood. They're in the builder risk insurance business. But I'd have to, I mean, nothing I would say isn't otherwise available from listening to this, but I could reach out to him and see if he knows somebody. But he's solely in the builder risk in commercial projects. So it just, but I'd sort of, I mean, the cat's already out of the hat, but I would talk to him openly. But Ed, I know you're also in that business. So if you know,
that was a long time ago. I was a long time ago. So I don't know. I just know there are lawyers out there that do a very good job at that, because they know exactly what documents to request, and given the permission, then they can legally request those. And I'm sure we could come up with names of them, but I think if you knew somebody that was in that practice, that would be a good place to start and get a referral and find out. It just seems to me, just as a taxpayer, that for something that expensive, and that all of this we went through for LEED certification and all of the cost overruns that we had, and it's all documented, to come back and find this kind of stuff, it just goes against the grain to think there's nothing you can do other than that about it. So,
well, if the committee wants me, I'll reach out to him, and I'd probably just put him in touch, Tom, with you. But if he has a contact, I mean, he's a resident, so in one respect, he has a vested interest. But he also still pending internet, so you better be careful. So,
we'll have to come in here and do it.
Thank you, Mr. Brost. I can definitely
so
reach
he's
out
gonna
to him
ask
if you
for
don't.
something.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I'll see if he knows somebody, and he's a good guy. I mean, he's a good guy. So but I'll talk to him and see if he has advice, and either way, I'll follow up with you, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Broski.
I'm just wondering, like, I want to make, like, if we can do a motion where we have an amount of money and this guy has a person or is the person or whatever, so we can just
Yeah, I'm not
keep it going.
that. So I just know that there are people who do that. So if we could get an idea,
Yeah.
because we really don't know at this point how much damage we have.
Right. Yeah. All right. I mean, you tell, what do you think, Tom? Is that, do you need an amount of money or do you want to,
Either way, I mean, if it's for the actual repair of the engineering.
no, for this, the insurance guy, lawyer person that's going to go figure
Well,
out.
Tom, don't you have up to 10,000
Yep.
authority?
And I think, yeah, I was going to just say with this,
So I would say some preliminary thing would definitely be within Tom's
Yeah.
authority.
I would agree with that sentiment.
I just want you to know, not that you need, I mean, you can spend that without asking our permission, but I want you to very clearly understand that you have our permission to do that.
Yes.
I just,
Yeah, yes, it's too big of a question.
okay, now you want to talk about the leaks?
Yeah, can we?
Since those people, since the company are coming back,
Mhm.
I would, while they're here to do the guttering and stuff, I would make a motion that we have them finish up these couple other things that they've identified while they were here. That also probably fall under your dollar amount, but to make sure that there's something that when they're doing the work, they found out needed to be done to make it a more permanent repair, that we should go ahead and have them do it while they're on site. They got their ladders out. That would be the best way to do that. I know that you had said yeah. That was up on on top of the bricks. Was there something else that you were gonna have them do that angle back on the back?
Yeah, so this one up here with the clock tower, that one's fixed, but to add longevity to it, it was to add, I call it sheet metal. He had a different solution that was a little bit more
Yeah, kinda like
aesthetically.
flashing.
Yeah, some flashing that would just have it angled properly. There's some downspouts there already, so it'd just be angling the water into those downspouts. And then for the back police station leak, that one's a little bit more tricky because now we have to figure out where that leak's coming from because it was leaking. They definitely filled the leak. I mean, we've confirmed that. We did a water test that actually was coming through the hole that they filled, but it's almost like you fill this hole, that's where it was going before, and now it's cooling and then coming over here, and it has to do with those LEED certified
Well,
roofs.
I just think we should have that repaired
Yeah.
too, so that
Yep,
we don't lose the repair work you've already done.
exactly. And then the last one is the guttering. So that one, it seems that our contractor, that's a different contractor. They are being pretty helpful. We met with them actually on site today. They, like I mentioned, they will be out this week, and they already have committed to making some slight improvements. Obviously, they're not changing the whole scheme for free, but they're actually doing a couple things for us that are not going to charge us any additional dollar amount. So that's good to see. But if we have anything else, we can bring it back to you all and just have it done right then and there. It
I
might
think so.
require an impromptu meeting though. While they're up, and we did ask them because while they're up on the roof, the idea is take a look at the top of those dormers. Is there a hole there? I mean, as you're putting in this guttering, are you seeing the signs like, hey, this is going to go out? You don't want to give a contractor a leash like that where you're just like, hey, tell me all the stuff I need to do. But at the same time, on this very specific component where we're seeing the leak, if there's anything that you see that might be contributing to that leak, just as Stat did, which was appreciated, they noticed that, hey, we fixed the leak, but the reason why the leak happened was because you don't have this flashing. That was the bulk of it. So that is being discussed and requested from both contractors at this time.
So do you need that in a motion, or are you just gonna have them do it?
We can do that. And if it goes over the full contract amount, we'll have to bring it back. But
Fine.
in this case, whatever we can do within my ability, we can do it.
And we'll have a meeting soon, so
Yep.
we can always add it onto that.
Well, that's gonna change. That might very well change that anyways.
Well, yes.
Next question.
Yeah, so I don't know if a motion is necessary or whatever, but I do think we need to get some engagement with MSD and figure out whatever is happening with them or how that's going to work. And I also think, I mean, all this, the quick research I'm doing, while I understand a level of the importance of a LEED certification on a building, if we have to make adjustments and that goes away, at the moment, I personally don't really care about that. But, you know, that might be something we want to have a conversation, you know, so that we know, because my guess is if we're going to try to do this in a LEED certified way, if that's economical, great. But if it's not, I'm not sure that it is. I get, like a lot of the things around here, I understand the original idea, and if it worked out, great, but it doesn't. So we can put in more LED lights maybe and balance it out or something.
Strobe.
Yeah. So I don't know if you need, I mean, like that's, I don't know if we need to go to the council to understand that as a whole, but I mean, that's probably a conversation we should have sooner rather than later.
We can have, with a motion tonight, that would probably require a motion. If we want to bring that to the full council of whether or not these, as we're looking at these repairs and the bigger picture for the building, do we need to keep the LEED sunglasses on, if you will? Do we need to keep looking at it through that lens? It will add cost. That said, is it something the council as a body? I think that's a council decision. So we could entertain a motion then at that point.
I mean, I assume we're going to talk about some of this at the council meeting anyways, right?
Yep.
So we can just add that in. Okay, so I'll make a motion to include the continuation of a LEED certification if necessary,
Requirements.
the requirements of that.
So we start
the full
taking
council.
stuff apart.
Yeah.
What's required. I'll be happy to second that. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
All good. Motion pass.
And then I got one other thing that might, I was maybe a little off topic. I don't know, but it would be for this plastic soil thing is big and it's everywhere. And so I don't know if we need to, I don't know how we address that with the private property owners on the other side of us, but with the stuff that is going to be built and some of the other concerns that we have, it is probably worth having the conversation about whether we need to address that in some way. I don't know what that way would be, but you know, we're going to inherit this mess across the street, which will be the same thing.
Well, Mr. Farmer, I can assure you that Mr. Brown and I require as part of any development, whether it's small in scale or as large as they come in Wildwood, that they provide a signed and sealed geotechnical report. Those reports are reviewed by Mr. Brown and the Department of Planning. And when we see those telltale signs of problems, obviously those are the things we identified to the development community. And as the improvement plans, those construction drawings move through, we want to ensure that the steps that are set forth in the geotechnical report are included. And then we tie it all up with that geotechnical engineer signing and sealing the plans, saying that the plans address the recommendations in the report.
And I get that and believe you, but
We don't have.
we
those
don't have that
signed plans,
here.
do we? Do we have signed plans?
Yes, we did a geotechnical report as required under the ordinance approving the zoning for City Hall. And that was included as part of the site development plan package. You can have the best plans, the best engineers. It depends on the contractor doing the work.
Yeah, to add some context to Mr. Vunich, we did have all those in place. And the geotechnical report had requested that, hey, there are plastic soils on this property. You need to carve out about 3 feet and then use a aggregate rock mix to create a buffer to allow for that. What that aggregate does allows for compaction and contraction once it gets hot and cold. And at that point, it seems as if there was not 3 feet dug universally across the entirety of the foundation. it was execution, not planning.
Wasn't there a real challenge with rock as well? They had to, because we wouldn't let them dynamite, they had to grind it. And that was a whole other added cost of grinding out in order to allow the kids to get in there, I guess. But they had that real problem with that. I remember that.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, I mean, I have super limited experience with this, but like I remember when we had our basement done, when the electrical inspectors come out, they come like, it's like a fate, like they come out a couple times to make sure that each part is being done correctly. I'm just wondering if we need to do something like that specific to like just this area, since it is important to the city, and also where like it's clear that we have this problem here. I mean, I guess the geotechnical stuff tells you that other places, but I mean, we definitely know. So I don't know if we can do that, but that would probably not be a bad thing, since we're going to put theoretically several large buildings, much bigger than this building, in that are theoretically significantly heavier.
I guess.
I mean, Joe, when I did my house, we had plastic soils, and I had to excavate an additional 2 feet, and then put in the aggregate and the drainage, and I would say that it was never really subject to inspection. Like, it's a common practice, and I would think most residential builders do it, that when you dig, you have a soil engineer come out, and it's a fairly simple test on the soil, and they say yay or nay. And if it's good, you pour your footings. If it's bad, you excavate, and you put down, their recommendation. But I don't think there was ever, at least on the residential side, there's not an additional inspection that's done by St. Louis County. Should we, because of this heightened concern, should we require something in the form of a report of a soil engineer, particularly, let's just say within town center, and then some type of verification that the work was done? Because it's, I'm going to be digging a foundation here soon. They're not going to come out and tell me whether my soil was good. I darn well want to know whether it's good. So I mean, Mr. Vunich, I might be wrong, but that's what my experience has been. But I can't speak for commercial. I only speak for residential.
Over the course of the history of Wildwood, the grading code and the components associated with it have always been the responsibility of the city. We created our standalone grading code as one of the first 160 ordinances because there were concerns about how St. Louis County interpreted their code or lack of code. And so when St. Louis County came out to do the building inspection, the grading component may not have been on their list of priorities. It certainly should have been on the cities, and obviously there are a lot of reasons why I think it happened, but none that I can give you assurance to. But what we can do with these other projects is Mr. Brown, as the Director of Public Works, and the Department of Planning can ask for as-built surveys. So once the work is completed, an engineer has to go back out, do a survey of the work to ensure it was done according to plan, and then submit those as-built. And so that gives us the guarantee that the work was done in accordance with the plan. And then we can move forward with the next phase or next stage in the construction. So there are provisions in our code that give us that authority, and if that's something we want to do with the projects around City Hall, we certainly can include that as a component.
I mean, would we need to, like, we've only done it once, but is that where like an SCOD comes in? Because we know there's maybe something, and Like these guys could get their stuff tested and it's completely fine and then we don't have to worry about it. But it's that kind of extra step just because of where it is and how it's working here that, you know,
Well, just in a simple subdivision, we get as-bills for the streets just to make sure they're in the easement or right-of-way areas. And we do core sampling, Department of Public Works, to make sure the depth of the base, whatever type of pavement surface is to the measured requirements. And so in this case, we can guarantee, through an as-built or something similar, I think we can protect the developer and the people that live in those rental units in the future.
okay. I mean, do we need to have do we need to have the whole council go through that, or is that just something, I mean, that's outside of what we're doing here tonight, obviously.
I mean,
In this
it
case,
sounds
the-
like it's what we're doing.
Sorry, Mr. Bruce.
It's
Yes, so like we,
doing, but and in some respects, I don't, if it's private property, it shouldn't necessarily be incumbent upon the city. But I think it's incumbent upon the city to advise someone of the heightened concern. It wasn't, I had a permit through St. Louis County and the city of Wildwood to do my house, but it's really my responsibility to make sure it's done right. And I'm just saying is that when it came to the plastic soil I encountered, it wasn't like that electrical inspection that you referenced, Joe. I had that soil test done and I did the remediation. I don't recall the county, and again, Wildwood was not involved in that part, but so I think most important for us is like any developments around the city, like say, hey, time out, make sure you guys check plastic soil because we're having a big problem. And if they build a house and it starts cracking, it's not our fault. We're not going to be out $9 million on that one.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make us have more work. I'm just wondering, like, making sure that they are doing the right thing. I mean, as we've learned a few times, like, we hope that everybody will, but that doesn't always happen all the time. So I would like us to be the best possible place to go. We have done everything we could do.
Yes. As we should.
I know we have some additional documents here. Would you like to explain those?
yes, thank you, Chair. Getting to the kind of the last little bit, these are a little bit more, not obviously we kind of taken care of we haven't taken care of, but we've talked about the more important items today. This is more just additional items that are on the radar that we'll be looking to work on this year. So one, just the lattice that was brought up at the last meeting. We've been working we're probably going to need to stain it because if you were to take it off, it's going to leave kind of like its own stain, if you will, since it's been there for so long. But if you're going to stain that, then you're going to want it to match the south side of the building has the overhang. So it does start to get up in expense a little bit, but it could probably be done for less
Is it
than
good enough to repair? It looks to me like it was rotting and falling apart.
It's the lattice on the west and east sides.
Okay.
Yeah, when I went out there and took a look myself, it wasn't falling apart. It could be sealed. It definitely needs a paint job.
Does it? I mean, staining that lattice, having stained a few things,
A lot of staining.
that's a lot of stain and it's a lot of intricate work. Are we not better served just painting it whatever color the stucco or whatever it is on the side underneath it is?
We could do that as well. We could remove. We could remove that. Joe, would that need to go through architecture review?
We could pick that yellow color they used up at the shrimp joint. It's on the
Technically,
palette.
the beige, yes.
Probably some of the brushes still.
I would encourage the ad hoc building committee to have the Architectural Review Board consider the removal of the lattice work because it's on the approved plans. It's not to say it can't happen. I think the point Tom and I had discussed was once you remove the lattice, given the sun and time, the lattice pattern is still going to be on that wood that forms the end of the building. And so therefore, maybe it's just a matter of spraying on the stain. I don't know if it needs to be hand painted, but certainly there's options.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all stained, is it? Over there, isn't it
I
paint?
thought it was white paint. but-
Yeah, I thought it was paint with the lattice over the top. Is it not? Yeah, I'm just saying, just paint it all white. Just call it a day.
We could do that.
Maybe just
Yeah.
look at the options.
We could stay, yeah, would you bring back some options on?
Yeah, I mean,
removal,
I
painting?
assume the staining is going to be more expensive than just spraying that white.
Yeah, we could
whatever
definitely have
color
it.
it is.
We, how about this? We provide, the department could provide stain and just going in and painting it white.
Perfect. And how about this? Whichever one is less expensive,
We'll go there.
just do that.
Okay.
You don't even have to tell us about it.
All right.
The Rhino Shield, it's good for 20 years. On.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
It's a flex seal. Just all right. So the other item, just wanted to bring up some more optional items that could kind of help with aesthetics. We did get a roof cleaning proposal. We didn't want to do the roof cleaning because
Not till the gutters get on.
so we get yes, because it's leaking, but the sun is facing the south side of the roof the majority of the time. But there has been a couple council members that have brought up the north side of the roof that faces Main Street has it's in the dark. It does not get as much sunlight, so it gets a little bit. It just looks a little bit more groggy. So the idea was it's about $3,328. Probably about another. This was right before Celebrate Wildwood when we got that quote. So in this case, we're probably going to see it go up a little bit, but to clean the north side of the city hall, I was thinking we don't do it until we fix the leaks that are currently going on, period. But after that, we could potentially have that discussion, but only for that side. The whole quote that came in was across the board cleaning everything. I think after really looking at the roof of the building, the north side is the only thing that's truly in need of it. But I would say that it's kind of these items are kind of taking a back seat to the main problems that we're facing.
Sorry.
So I was looking through this stuff, and I would maybe suggest this, while we're looking at the kind of overall, what are we going to do with this building in the long term? To my recollection, we have not done a great job of just kind of the world's most basic upkeep on this place for as long as I've been on council. So I would almost suggest like any of these things that fall within normal stuff, like I got to get my house power washed every 2 years or something like that. Like this is the cost of having our own city hall. So, I mean, I'm with you in terms of like waiting, to get the leaks fixed because we don't need to duplicate that. But all of these little things that need to be done, you should do them. Like,
Every 3 or 4 years, it should be.
yeah, there should be a list every year of
Regular
like
maintenance.
100 of these things that are just getting done.
And then you still have emergencies like this hot water tank.
Yeah.
That one,
You need to take care of, so you have hot water.
well, yes, and that one actually is an option. It's functional. Could work for another 20 years, could spit out on us in it could be tomorrow. It really could. That said, right now there's an aluminum rod. It pretty much causes it not to erode the tank and start. Eventually what will happen if it'll start leaking. But we had another, it's $3,568 to replace this rod. That technically it works. It's just an error code. Right now we're getting an error code on our water heater. The one company came out with $35.68 and said to replace that rod, that's going to cost this. It'll help extend the life, but the life could be another 20 years. It's still fully functional. There is no safety risk. The biggest threat that could occur is that it would stop working anywhere between 5 and 20 years from now. That said, that was going to be the discussion tonight. The other consultant came out, the contractor came out and said, you actually probably have a bigger tank and a more complicated tank than it's the tank that was installed with the building. So
They installed the wrong tank, shockingly.
it's actually
Short life tank.
Yeah.
the tank could support,
10 city halls.
two city halls for sure.
Is one
It-
draining under the building?
no, I
Just under.
that would be an
roofs.
easy fix. So the question tonight would be, we could just, this is something where it's not causing any issues. There's no immediate damage to it. It's normal wear and tear, or we can pay the 3568 and you definitely you might get a extra little bit of time, but it's either way, it's kind of at the end of life. It's going to keep working until it stops. It's kind of where
How much is a new water heater?
it's like $10,000. So plus labor, probably
There's
12,
a great
13.
letter upstairs that Dan Dubril wrote to the council, that all of this technology came in. And he said, this is really fantastic. We don't have anybody, nor are there any contractors that know how to service the stuff,
Mhm.
because it was all state of the art, all computerized, and several times said, we don't even know how to control these things. And he called the people and he said, well, we'll send somebody in from Cleveland. We'll send somebody in. So I think if you know that's what it's going to take, shame on us for not taking care of it now. It's never going to be less expensive.
Mhm.
So I think if that will do it and you get another 10 years out of it, you made a good decision.
They can't promise 10 years though.
No, I don't. But
Okay.
that's going to be a lot better than what you have now. And I don't think you want to change the whole tank out. And I'm sure when the time comes to change it out, we really wouldn't need this.
Yeah.
But it was all energy efficient, all of these different things that we want to do. Lauren,
I was just gonna say, because it's gonna limp along at least for 6 more months, would it not be more prudent just to get some more estimates on the building? I mean, we're still concerned about the walls shifting. Because I would hate to get a new furnace for a building that's not gonna last the life of the
Yeah.
furnace.
We could do that. Either
Yeah,
or.
it-
Well, the idea,
go ahead.
I was just
Lauren.
gonna say, I know it's a couple thousand, but I mean, wouldn't it? I'm not saying don't fix it and let it add up forever. I'm just saying I would at least like to know if you're,
Okay. Any other comments?
well, the idea tonight was, with the major items we were discussing before this that are more systemic and more just of major consequence, it's almost, could we use that money? We were told by both contractors that it's still functional. It has it has 2 aluminum rods that is serving as kind of as a cap and allowing non-degradation of the device. That said, eventually it will give out. So the idea today is just getting feedback, because with these other items, we might want to shift the money that way. Just based off how much we're talking potentially with the rain garden, and also whatever leak that might spur up on the police station side as well.
Yeah.
Maybe give it-
If we get $1 million repair bill for the rain garden, I don't think we're going to care about $3,500 for the water heater.
That-
I was probably gonna say is that you're gonna need hot water if you want to sell a building anyway. So I
It's-
think those are things. that you
Yeah,
gotta
I would just suggest, I don't disagree with Lauren on this
I do.
necessarily, but like, it's the cost of doing business. So I would leave it up to you or whoever our building facilities person is to go, hey, it's time to replace this rod. And then great, just replace the rod or whatever we need to do.
I just think we don't want to get in the same trap we were before, where we don't do anything for 10 years and then say, how'd it get this way?
Mhm.
So I only have one little additional thing. Can we put some epoxy glue in that wooden step? The
Yeah,
step
yeah.
corner's got a big crack in it. It is one at the bottom. Yeah, I mean, I just think
had-
maybe that could be preserved 6 more months or whatever before somebody, I don't think it's gonna break. I think somebody's gonna get their shoe caught in it.
So yes, and that staircase is made out of some type of its base is steel, and then it has these wooden hoppers
The
to
near
it.
finish, yeah.
We can definitely put the epoxy in there. One item to just keep in mind is if we epoxy it, it is probably going to separate again as the temperatures change, just because we have the movement in the building. So in that case, that staircase that was caused. It wasn't caused by like
There were
natural.
discussions about those things from the very beginning.
So we could definitely fill it with epoxy.
I just like to
But
be safe.
yeah,
I
yeah,
just think it looks pretty sad, but I do think somebody with a heel could easily
get stuck in there.
catch there, and then we're going to be saying, well, how'd that person trip?
We can get that fixed. It could, but just mentioning that it will probably open up again until we get the expansion issue fixed, but we can get some epoxy.
I have some liquid nail caps. You can just stick them on there, and when it opens up, hit it with another one, stick it back
Yeah,
down.
that's-
It'll last us for 3 more months.
We'll put carpet on it. All right. Anything else, Mr. Lee, on your list?
Nothing else tonight, but thank you, Chair, and thank you all for the time this evening.
Committee, anything else? Motion to adjourn? We have a motion. We need a second. Lauren seconds the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you all very much.